Perched high in the mountains above Lone Pine, near the base of Mount Whitney, is a mysterious building, hand-hewn in granite and nestled into a canyon surrounded by 13,000-foot peaks. A place of incredible beauty and serenity, the building has for years been an enigma to hikers and climbers unfamiliar with its purpose. Who built it, and why? The story begins in the 1930s with this man, a scientist, thinker, and philosopher named Franklin Merrell-Wolff. In pursuit of higher consciousness and an understanding of life's deeper meanings, Dr. Wolff, his students, and colleagues constructed a building in which to further their work. They called it the Ashrama, a Hindu word referring to a spiritual meeting place. 50 years later, Franklin Wolff still lives at the base of the canyon holding the Ashrama, and still writes, teaches, and shares the wisdom of his 96 years here with students who continue to come from miles and even continents away.
Well, there is an event that is of major importance in the history of humanity. That event is commonly known as realization, or the experience of enlightenment.
Dr. Wolff began his quest for enlightenment as a scholar of mathematics and went on to receive a PhD in philosophy from Harvard University.
I was called to the search myself, and there was a breakthrough on August 7th, 1936, which was of fundamental importance, and it constituted the foundation of all my work since.
Starting with a foundation based on classical Western thought and philosophy, Wolff became interested in the Eastern philosophy of Shankara and Buddha, and synthesized his own philosophy intended for the Western mind. His work is outlined in his first book, Pathways Through to Space, and uses an approach that combines the disciplines of science and philosophy, a connection first created by the mathematician philosophers of ancient Greece. A major force in Dr. Wolff's life during his early work was his wife and collaborator, Sharifa.
It was our work, a joint work. She was almost like a royal personality. She remembered past incarnations that were on the royal level. It made her a little difficult to live with because royalty doesn't have to bother with know-how. All that royalty has to do is demand, and those around royalty produce.
Dr. Wolff, how did you pick this spot at the base of Mount Whitney?
Back in the 30s, we had listened to, my former wife and I, an East Indian philosopher, and he said the spiritual center of any country is connected with the highest elevation in that country. At that time, the highest elevation was Mount Whitney. So my wife and I decided to found a center up here as near to that point as we could. And that's what led to, we got the use of land from the Forest Service for that end, with the requirement that we had to put a building on it.
And so, with this in mind, Dr. Wolff and Sharifa began in the 1930s the arduous task of building the ashrama. This documentary film, made by one of Wolff's students, shows some of the hardships of the task, which was to take many years and countless man-hours to complete.
It was laborious. First of all, there was so much rock. You could make no progress without dynamite. And as I was the only one that knew anything about dynamite, I handled all of that. And that's something you cannot divide up among people with any safety. So, and I was the only one that knew anything about tempering of irons. And so that fell to me, be my activity.
The building was constructed primarily out of granite gathered in the area, combined with mortar, lumber, and other materials brought up on the backs of mules. Dr. Wolff performed the first services at the ashrama under a tent constructed where the present building now stands. Although age now prevents Wolff from making the hike to the ashrama, he still gives services and sees students regularly at his home.
He has the same mind, the same keen mind. That hasn't changed. And he's a man to be remembered, I can tell you that.
He's one who sees and listens and uses all his faculties with a razor-sharp clarity. And that's accompanied by a deep love for everything he sees at the same time. And it's a very inspiring way to be human.
Western philosophy has been in the gutter of materialism for the last 100 years. And I think Dr. Wolff has found philosophy there and lifted it up to the human spirit, the heart. And that's almost an anti-philosophical statement, but it's true. There's a passion and a life that Dr. Wolff brings to philosophy which hasn't existed for 100 years since Kant. And in that sense, personally, it's been very important to me.
Today, with his age approaching 1 century, Dr. Wolff is fascinated with his own impending death.
The thing that stands out most is related to processes connected with the transition. I don't know whether you're familiar with the Tibetan Book of the Dead, but it seems to be the best source of information concerning the processes following physical termination here. It does not teach that that is a destruction of consciousness. But what it does teach, it is a modification of consciousness so that it becomes adapted to a different domain, an adaptation which involves transforming of concepts and so forth, or even the disappearance of conceptual capacity and moving through other aspects of consciousness. I fully accept the conception of reincarnation and that these withdrawals are periodic, that they're a period of reinforcement and a preparation for further work in this world. I fully accept that. I do not feel anxiety at at the prospect of the transition. It'll be a major experience, of course, naturally. But I do not dread it. I have dealt with it as an idea for a very long time. So that in that sense, the idea is familiar.
Are you satisfied with the work that you've done? Do you feel that your work is completed?
On the whole, I am. I think it is reasonably completed, that I have said what I had to say. And I've said it repeatedly and written it.
Having spent his life in the pursuit of education, wisdom, and enlightenment, Dr. Wolff now leaves for the world a legacy in the form of his philosophy. And standing as an enduring symbol of that philosophy is the Ashrama, still a place of incredible serenity and beauty.
In 1963, this area was included in a National Wilderness Act, and the Forest Service seriously considered dynamiting the building. Fortunately, that wasn't done, and it now appears as though the ashrama may become a historical monument.
The hike up to the ashrama takes about 2 hours over a well-worn trail. Once there, you will find a huge fireplace where you can warm yourself, rest, and reflect. But one question remains. Will there be anyone to carry on Dr. Wolff's work once he is gone?
No, I can hardly say that. I'm leaving it to what we call the law to bring about what any continuation there may be. Someone may be called to it. I hope so.